What's going on, everyone? It's Zelonis here, and today we are going to be talking about The Cleveland Show and why it may have been cancelled. If you don't know what it is, I don't blame you, but The Cleveland Show is a spin-off of Family Guy, which first aired in September of 2009 and was cancelled in May of 2013 due to low ratings. What happened to The Cleveland Show? It had 4 seasons and was closing in on its 100th episode, so why did it get cancelled? We can sum it up to low ratings and call it a day, but let's delve into what may have contributed to the show receiving low ratings, which led to its eventual cancellation. First off, let's talk about the main character of the show, Cleveland. When I first heard the news that Cleveland was going to get his own spin-off, I thought to myself, why Cleveland? He is easily one of the most boring characters in Family Guy, so why him? He's not amusing. He hardly says anything clever. Sure, he has some iconic lines like, no, 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 and, oh, that's nasty, but that's about it. He's just too stale of a character to have his own show. Who wants to watch a show about a guy who speaks in a monotone voice and is the most mundane character of said show? They could have easily made a show about Joe, one of Peter's other friends, who is handicapped and is a cop. That's already interesting enough. A show about a handicapped man living his life as a cop? Or perhaps Quagmire. Okay, maybe not Quagmire. Since the writers were so keen on making Cleveland the main character for this spin-off, The Cleveland Show, they pretty much needed to reconstruct his entire character, and that is what they did. He was transformed from a guy who had the personality of a cardboard into a clone of Peter Griffin. Except Cleveland is not as dumb nor cruel as Peter. Since The Cleveland Show is just a spin-off of Family Guy, why would the average viewer of Family Guy want to watch a spin-off where the main character is a watered-down version of Peter Griffin? Granted, that's not to say I personally like Peter or Family Guy more. If I'm being honest with myself, I prefer Cleveland over Peter, but the majority seems to disagree. Unfortunately, the similarities do not end there. There are several characters who are relatively identical to their Mother series counterparts. We have the wife to the husband, the teenage daughter who people don't understand, the incredibly awkward teenage son, and their youngest child who is too self-aware of what is happening around him for his age. I will stand my ground and say that I prefer this family over this family. However, the Griffin family has been around much longer than the Brown/Tubbs family, and thus the average viewer of Family Guy who gave the Cleveland Show a chance feels more comfortable watching them, opposed to the Brown/Tubbs, since the two families are so similar. It's not just the families who are strikingly similar, it's also Cleveland's friends too. Cleveland has 3 friends he hangs out with. You know who also has 3 friends he hangs out with? That's right, Peter does. What is the main location we catch Cleveland hanging out with his friends at? At a bar. That's where they spend most of their time chatting and drinking beer. So does Peter and his friends. Both Cleveland and Peter have a 4th friend they hang out with. Sometimes this friend may join our main character at the bar, but not always. Cleveland has his friend Terry, and Peter has his friend Brian. And the similarities between Cleveland and Peter's friends does not end there. If the only resemblance was the number of friends and the location where they hang out at, then I personally wouldn't feel that is enough to label this show as unoriginal. But let's see how Cleveland's friends resembles Peter's friends. Both have a talking humanoid animal who is attracted to our main character's wife. Both have a character who is sexualized, and every joke revolving around him is affiliated with sexual things. And both have a man who is viewed to not be physically the same as his peers and is a little bit of a weirdo. This segues into my next reason, which is The Cleveland Show is constantly getting compared to Family Guy. Originally, when I saw the first few episodes of the first season, I couldn't help but recognize how similar the show was to Family Guy. Not only do the two shows have a similar cast and characters, personalities, and traits-wise, but the episodic formula stories are also similar, except the Cleveland show has significantly less cutaway gags. Be that a cursing or a blessing, well, I'll leave that up to you. Personally, I'm not a fan of the constant cutaway gags because they serve no purpose to the story and are meant to only be filler to get a cheap laugh out of us. The Cleveland show has an identity crisis. It's too attached to Family Guy, and it is always going to be compared to it, so the show will never survive if we are always going to be making these comparisons. And I don't blame people for comparing the Cleveland show to Family Guy. They both were created by Seth MacFarlane. The protagonists are similar, the cast is similar, and the story structure is similar. If the Cleveland show wanted to prosper, they should have done more to distinguish it from Family Guy. The Cleveland show is Seth MacFarlane's third series, which involves an animated sitcom about a family man living an episodic life. The reason why American Dad was able to prosper and not the Cleveland show is because American Dad built an identity for itself. It doesn't rely on cutaway gags, and the stories are far more structured and different than Family Guy. Let's take a look at Stan, the main character. Stan is much more nuanced than Peter. Stan always feels he needs to present himself to be the alpha Chad wherever he goes and does. For a while, we never question it. He just was that way. And the show is taking a completely different angle from that of Family Guy, since Peter is essentially a bumbling idiot. It's a breath of fresh air, since Stan is in no way the same as Peter. But later on, we get more of an insight as to why Stan feels he needs to act this way. His father left him and his mom when he was a young boy, so he forced himself to grow up. Not literally, but Stan got a job. He helped pay the bills around the house and took care of his mom, because if he did not, then who will? So, when Stan was growing up, he came to the conclusion that he needs to be a man. In his mind, men are not supposed to cry. They are not supposed to show their feelings. They must do everything themselves, and they must never complain about doing their job. He had this, and many more beliefs, forced on him at a young age, which shaped him into the man we see today. Let's take a look at Stan's kids. Steve is also socially awkward, and Haley also seems to be misunderstood by her family. But they both have more going to them than just being awkward and misunderstood. Of all three of these families, the Smiths are the best in my eyes because they can play off each other so well, especially when it comes to Stan interacting with his kids. All of those beliefs Stan has, he wants his kids to have too, but they don't want to. They don't want to act like Stan does, and they don't believe in what Stan believes in. You can describe Stan as someone who aligns his political beliefs as more on the right, whereas Haley aligns her beliefs more on the left. Stan presents himself to be the alpha Chad and wants his son to present himself that way too, but he does not. Steve would rather play video games, stay inside when it's hot outside, and take the easiest route to get things done. The fact that his children have such colliding personalities when compared to Stan means for better interactions. The episodes where Stan is having beef with someone in his family are easily my favorite because their beliefs are a foil to Stan's beliefs. Let's be honest. Who wants to watch a show about a family who is always getting along with no conflict? We get all of that from Stan, which helps distinguish American Dad from Family Guy. But what about Cleveland? Sure, we do get some insight about his past, but the show seems like it's not committed to it. They'll only bring up Cleveland's dad or his stepchildren's father whenever necessary, instead of using it to shape the character of Cleveland Brown. These two characters make for the best interactions with Cleveland Brown and can lead to some interesting stories. However, sometimes while you're watching the show, it feels like the creators may have wanted to go further, but they're afraid of straying away from the Family Guy formula. So, Cleveland exists on this spectrum, and at both ends are Peter and Stan. Cleveland is stuck in the middle. Sometimes he may be a bumbling idiot, and sometimes we get a Cleveland who is more in touch with his past and acting on his own free will than to sticking to the formula. Unfortunately, we can't have both because it only confuses us viewers. The show should commit to one of the two, or try something else entirely. That for sure would have given Cleveland more of an identity. Let's take a look at the episode Skip Day and use it as an example of how the show can be all over the place and feel like it's a chicken running around with its head cut off. Cleveland learns that everyone in school skipped school today, and he is proud of them because it's tradition. The only one who hasn't skipped school today is his son, Cleveland Jr., and Cleveland doesn't take a liking to this because he wants his son to stand up to authority. After Cleveland makes several attempts to get Cleveland Jr. to defy him, Cleveland Jr. finally punches his father. This causes Cleveland to seek and prove he is stronger than his son, but all of his efforts are in vain. So he accepts his fate and starts to act like an old man. After seeing his father act this way, Cleveland Jr. decides he's going to make it look like that he's gotten beaten up, and he tells everyone it was his dad. Cleveland Jr. was attempting to restore his father's masculinity. However, cops soon arrive, and once Cleveland hears he is under arrest for child abuse, he breaks his current character and acts violently and full of energy. Why? We just saw that Cleveland no longer has interest in acting this way. He accepted that he is getting old and weak. So why does he break character for this one scene? Was it for a cheap laugh? Why have him break character for this one scene specifically? It just doesn't make sense really. Like I said, the problem with episodes like this is that they are all over the place. Characters go through several character arcs, and before we adjust to the change of direction, the story is heading in a new one, and I don't like it. It's just so tedious and can make it a hassle to watch the episodes, but luckily not all of the episodes are like this, and there are some genuinely good episodes. Most of these episodes, stuff just happens. It's so random, and the writers try to play it off as random equals funny, but it just doesn't work. Sure, maybe a couple of times you'll get a chuckle out of me, but those few chuckles are not worth sitting through hundreds of jokes, which can be described as ha ha so random XD. Since the show is so similar to Family Guy, it really shows what Family Guy would be like if they did not have cutaway gags. You get a show that is crammed with gross out humor, a barely cohesive story, and bland/random jokes that are supposed to be stereotypical and or offensive. I'm not the one who easily gets offended by jokes, but their jokes which are supposed to offend someone are so tasteless, and their deliveries are just bad. They try to make it flow naturally within the story, but they always feel so awkwardly placed, and most of the time, the characters just blurt it out randomly. Take for instance, the episode where Rollo's older friend is getting married, and he invites Rollo. He then says, "I know you'll be late and bring 20 people. The joke is that black people are always late and bring a lot of friends to social events. Or perhaps the time Cleveland meets Barack Obama and casually greets him, the joke being that all black people know each other. Jokes like this are plagued throughout the show and are so quick and randomly inserted that they're gone quicker than we can process what just happened. Finally, the last element that I want to discuss is the alienation. As stated earlier, this show is a spin-off of Family Guy, and thus most of the traffic this show is going to receive is from viewers of Family Guy. But the fact that this show is so similar, yet slightly different, to Family Guy is what led to its own downfall. Allow me to explain. The show is similar in story structure as stated earlier. The cast is also similar, and the humor is similar. What makes the show different is the environment. We went from Quahog, which is a city, to Langley Falls, which gives us a more country environment. While I think a country environment can be a good setting, the show is too close to Family Guy, so we are more adjusted to the city. Also the cast. They are second-generation versions of the Family Guy counterparts. Cleveland is usually hanging out with 3 friends at a bar, and they're always drinking beer. The fact his friends are one-dimensional and have no character alienates us further. Terry is gay, Lester's a redneck, etc. The only characters imported from Family Guy to the Cleveland show are Cleveland and his son Cleveland Jr., but they are hardly recognizable from their previous appearances on Family Guy. Cleveland is no longer this mundane and monotone man who hardly exerts emotion. He's been converted to being 100 times more expressive, cheerful, and just in general more uppity, which is great, but still awkward how this huge shift in his character came absolutely out of nowhere and with no explanation really. And the few aspects that made Cleveland Jr. are no longer there. It's as if his energetic nature has been transmuted to Cleveland. He is no longer hyper and constantly on the move. He is now larger, much more calm, and socially awkward. But I will say this, Cleveland Jr. is my favorite character of the entire cast. Sure, he is a weirdo, but he is the most flushed out and original character of the show. So now it makes it much harder for us to get into the show. The only characters we are familiar with have gone through a lot of change. If Seth MacFarlane really wanted to have a third series set in the same universe, then they shouldn't have given Cleveland his own show and have copy and pasted the Family Guy formula. Instead, if they were really set on making Langley Falls its own setting, then they should have come up with a main character and cast from scratch to give the show an identity of itself. Or, if they wanted a show that resembles Family Guy, then leave Cleveland in Quahog and show what life is like off-screen for Cleveland. You could still introduce characters like Donna, her 2 kids, and Cleveland's other friends, but just leave them in Quahog, and maybe, just a big maybe, the show might have gone on longer. After everything the Cleveland show went through, I do not think that it is a bad show. But because it is so similar to Family Guy in every nature, it begs the question, why watch a clone of Family Guy when we are already accustomed to watching Family Guy? But anyways, that's gonna do it for the video, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree that these factors led to the cancellation of the Cleveland show? Maybe you have your own reasonings why the show wasn't as successful as Seth MacFarlane's other works. Regardless, I love to hear what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoy content like this. If you want to see more like this where I talk about other shows, movies, and anime, then please like and subscribe. It really helps out a lot and I would greatly appreciate it. I'll try to be more consistent and upload once or twice a week, but until then, I'll catch you in the next one.